shouldn't ask the question if you're not willing to listen to the answer and do something about it. That's growing some compassion. That's being willing to know where that person is coming from and doing something about it.
The following is a Big Sky Economic Development production.
It's Mars B.
And Kavo.
And this is The Vault at 201 North Broadway.
A business podcast.
Where we bring you entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders of Montana.
To share their stories, expertise, industry insights, and strategies.
And we are sharing them all with you every single week.
You don't want to miss this.
Learn how to better start, manage, and grow your business.
And your leadership style.
Tangible takeaways to save you time and improve whatever it is that you're working on.
You're listening to The Vault.
Thank you to the Small Business Development Center for sponsoring The Vault at 201 North Broadway. The Small Business Development Center offers free personalized support from business plans to financial projections and beyond, empowering small businesses to thrive. Reach out to us at bigsky.economicdevelopment.org.
Today joining us on The Vault is Jennifer Reiser. Welcome. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're so excited to talk to you today about something new that you've been working on and starting your own business.
Yes.
And we'll let you just dive into the name and, tell us the name,
Well,
Jennifer.
I think that's great. So just a little bit of background. I was always the person that didn't want to work for myself. I didn't think I would be motivated to do that. I think also it's a little bit scary, like how's it all going to work out? And I want all of the pieces to be aligned exactly the way they're supposed to be. But fortunately, I have really
control
good
issues too.
Yep. Fortunately, I have really good people in my corner who said, well, could you do it yourself? And I said, I don't know. And they said, you can, and we'll help you, right?
That's
and
awesome.
so the journey started just about a year ago, and I made the decision to start Jennifer Reiser Consulting. And it had a couple of different reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
I was being asked to do a lot of teaching, if you will, leadership, professional development outside of my regular work. And I was continuously telling people no, because I couldn't fit it under the umbrella in the system that I work in. And I didn't like saying no, and especially when it was something I felt that I was good at and that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so that opened a lot of doors to things. People like Karen Gross, Melanie Schwartz, Dave Nordell, they have been extremely supportive in helping me figure out and navigate this new journey. And Karen and I talked for a long time about me writing a book. And I can remember also about a year ago sitting down with William Henry and being frustrated because I said I really wanted to write a book, but I didn't have enough content. And William said to me, what is enough content? And I was like,
He's so good about asking great questions.
I don't know. And he said, I just read a book last night that was 24 pages long, and I got something out of it. And I thought, okay.
How about that?
Yeah. And so we started working on a couple different things last summer, Leadership Institute presentations and trainings. And then Dave had the idea to do a leadership workbook, activity book based on the leadership traits of animals.
Mm-hmm.
But he said he also thought it should be a coloring book. And because you can use both sides of your brain, right? Coloring gives you this opportunity to sort of just be creative and not think in the same way.
Yeah.
But then you have the journaling prompts to reflect on those leadership traits and how you either currently exhibit them or how you could grow and develop them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's come to life. And it's just been an amazing thing. I guess the other piece of that was Dave said, I have this idea, but I want you to do it. And I'll help you.
And I
was
think
like,
all of those people believing in you
Yes.
and just helping encourage you because they've watched you and worked with you over the years doing these things for someone else when you've had so much more to give.
Right. And it's just been really, really fun to lean into the best parts of my work. And I'll be honest, it makes some of the other things more tolerable, you know, because we all have aspects of our work life that we like more than others. Right.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you can tolerate some of the stuff when you're getting the opportunity to do the other things you love outside of that space. But the other thing it does is it makes you realize how much you really like those other things. and, begins you on this path of how do you figure out how to do that more?
Yes.
Right?
Do it more full time.
Yeah, maybe.
So we've talked a lot about it yesterday, and it was so exciting to hear this and see it for the first time. But for our listeners, what's a little bit of your background? Kayla and I both know you. We've known you for a long time, but give our audience your background, because I think it's so telling of how you've gotten to where you are and what you've now built with your consulting company.
Sure. Well, when I moved to Montana, I never thought I would stay. And I've lived here for 35 years, right? And I was always leaving, but there was always something that kept me here. And it wasn't the same something. It would be an additional scholarship at Rocky, or an opportunity to do a job, or a new relationship, or then it was, family and building a house and having kids and doing all of those things. And, we used to say when Sarah graduates from high school in 8 years, we can go wherever we want. And Sarah's been in college for 3 years.
Graduated.
So that was a long time ago that we had that conversation. And Billings has this way of hooking you, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of keeping you in a very good way. And a lot of it is the people. And I would not be where I am without the good leaders in my life, the bad leaders in my life, the new leaders in my life. I have a really great opportunity to work with people in all phases of their sort of leadership journey. Mm-hmm. And I do have, I think, an innate ability to customize and individualize the approach and the development of those people, which, to me just seems like what you do. But I've learned that that's not just what everybody does. And so again, looking at what are your strengths, how do you better utilize those on a regular basis? I have science degrees. Yeah. So my background is in biology and chemistry. I thought I would be a doctor. And then somewhere very close to graduation, I realized that doctors had to touch people and sick people, and you had to be responsible for their well-being. And, and back then, which, it wasn't that long ago, but it was long enough ago that there wasn't necessarily this focus on, there's all kinds of different doctors, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. I just had this idea of,
I'm going to be a doctor.
Yeah. And so the one thing I remember saying when people said, well, if you're not going to go to medical school, what are you going to do? Are you going to be a teacher? And I was like, no, I'm not going to be a teacher, because that was another word that in my head had a certain definition, right? Mm-hmm. And now I look at it, and the most ironic part of it is the thing I like to do the most is learn.
Yeah.
And the second,
and you're really good at teaching,
is sharing and teaching, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's all in how you define those things, right? So I spent almost 19 years working in environmental public health, a very science-based space, but I did a lot of education along with the inspection and enforcement work that we did. I also did a lot of workforce development as I was ending that work across the country, looking at how do you encourage students with science backgrounds to explore the world of environmental and public health as a career, right? So we did some core competency work for the people in that field, a very technical field. So we started to look at what are those non-technical core competencies that they needed to learn. And so funny, I just had a conversation the other day with people who are working in that, who are still saying that that is an issue. And I said, I have a study, I have a survey, I have all this stuff. It's been hiding under my desk for, 15 years almost, but
here you go.
But I have it. And so a lot of that work was translatable when I shifted gears and started doing organization and leadership development. And the really fun part about this coloring book that I've done is it's creative. It's not crafty. There's another word. Karen Gross and I have had this conversation that I was always told that I wasn't creative. And it really frustrated me because I thought that I was.
Yeah.
And she said, what they meant was you weren't crafty.
Yeah.
And I think was
that's
like,
a good.
Oh, you're right. So,
and it's different. I think she talks about that a little bit too, of just even her experiences of like, you're not X. And she's like, yeah. And it took her a while, but I think creative is different. Yeah. Yeah.
And so the book is called Leading in Color. It is based on the leadership traits of animals that we all see in the animal world. We look at an elephant and we know that they lead with, strength and compassion. We look at a parrot and we know that they lead with, embracing diversity and and recognition.
And a little bit of sass.
And a little bit of sass, right? And all these animals, I know, all of these animals, they just do this, right? And so do people, right? But we can learn from them, and we can, lead a little bit more like a cheetah in some spaces and lead a little bit more like a sloth in others, right? And you need all of those leadership traits and animals in your world and in your workspace in order to create the right environment, right?
I love this idea because I think a big part of what we do is we're constantly learning and evolving, right? But we also have morphed some ideas into different things. So leadership qualities, some people are told they're not leaders, right? And so then they think that about themselves, but maybe they just don't lead like a cheetah. Right. Maybe they do lead like an elephant. And so
you even have a spider in there.
I do have a spider.
She's a spider, which is interesting because you don't always think of
but they
spiders.
They lead with creativity. They lead with precision. I mean, take a look at the web, right?
Yeah.
But they're also not a flashy leader. When the web is done, they kind of step off to the side and they let others, in their environment do that. And in my environmental public health work, we talked a lot about environment, physical environment. Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about the policies and systems that you have in place so that when you are a leader, if your practice is to, go out and take a walk every afternoon and your employees, your team sees you do that and they do that, but you don't have a policy to support that. When the leader leaves, it may not continue, right? And so you have to create these environments where people can bring their authentic self, where they can leverage their strengths, where they feel comfortable, they feel like they belong in the animal world, right? And sometimes you have to think about it's kind of like, great, we are, a jungle. And why do we have a camel? And so then we need to look at, the leadership characteristics of a camel and say, okay, how can we use that? How can we create a space in this jungle for the camel, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be really fun. There are 2 books. One is based on land animals, and the other is based on animals in the sea and sky. And again, it's a great big world out there. And there's a lot of different kinds of animals. And, we picked 48 animals and 96 characteristics. Some of them sort of overlap, but you can see how one animal might lead with, foresight, and another one might also do that, but they do it differently.
Yeah.
And so, or, teamwork or collaboration, collaboration, things that we all do, but we do a little bit differently.
Just like the animals that do it differently. And I think what's exciting is you talked a little bit about it earlier, but really meeting people where they're at and building that programming around. And we've experienced that in working with you in the past, and you do such a great job of seeing that and then building the programming out for that, because I think you're in an organization, no matter what the level is, you're trying to build leaders and have everyone see themselves as leaders in their roles at no matter, even if they don't have a C-suite title.
Yep. You don't lead because of the title. You lead because of who you are, right? Mm-hmm. You can lead in the middle. You can lead from the bottom. You can lead, and we hope that you lead from the top, but sometimes that's not necessarily happening either,
And everybody has leadership traits.
Yes. Yep. And you can just develop them. And so yeah, I've done a lot of other kinds of work. I've done some board retreats and some organizational strategic planning. And again, it's looking at what does that leadership team want? What does the board need? And creating customized experiences to do that as well.
Do you find that when you're working with these groups that there are similar things that a lot of organizations need across the board?
Yeah.
Or is it really just pretty?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the policy, systems, and environment, right? And now they're not all going to look exactly the same, but you need structure. You need some foundational elements. What a zoo needs and what a tourism entity needs might be 2 different things, but they still need, foundational elements that will be in place when the people in the chairs change, right? So you need job descriptions. You need, up-to-date and frequently reviewed employee handbooks. You need personal development plans and growth plans for your team. You need a succession plan. The same leader is not going to lead an organization forever, right? And so the work that they have done and the legacy that they lead needs to remain when they leave, right? And so in order for that to happen, you have to have some structure and some foundational pieces, right? Because, there's also that saying that you can't build the plane while you're flying it, right? So you need to build the pieces, put the pieces together, and then take off and do new things. And so I think they all need that. I do think people need to take time to figure out who it is, who they are, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and share that internally. I think a lot of times the struggles I see are people are very concerned, and rightfully so, about brand recognition and brand expansion and sharing externally. But you need to look inward, and you need to develop those things and have your team understand the why, understand how they are contributing to the overall mission. And if they don't know, you need to talk to them about it. And you need to maybe sometimes make adjustments so that they feel a little bit more connected to it.
Would you recommend a business doing this once, or do you recommend them taking a look at it every couple of years and going, where are our processes, our policies and procedures, and do we see room for improvement?
Yeah, I think it's every 3 to 5 years. I really do. And you have to build in some flexibility along the way, especially if you build a strategy around a particular person or their skill set, and then that person poofs away. People make choices. They go places. They have things beyond their control. But it really is about establishing those foundational elements that will live on, right? But also paying attention to creating those with people in mind, and having those sometimes difficult and open conversations with the people on your team so you better understand what they want. Because if Marcel has no interest in leading people and I put her in a role to lead people, she's not going to be happy. But if I just magically think that everybody just, when we see that in leadership roles, a lot of times you're a really good fill in the blank, you should be a supervisor. Well, maybe you don't want to be, or maybe you're not ready to be. Right. And so we need to better understand that and align our organizational goals with the individual people's goals and kind of balancing what does the organization need and what do the employees want. Right. Because you can't only do what people want. I'm not saying that by any means.
But understanding what they want. And so how do you, like with some of the animals and things like that, what are some things that managers or people that do oversee people, what are some tips that you have for them in using this kind of information to help get better performance from their team? So maybe they're high performing teams, but there's always you can always level up.
Well, I think it's important to look at what are the leadership characteristics or just inherent traits that people have and what ones do they want to develop, right? Because I think that if you identify those, you can learn how to do that, right? You can find experiences. If you're not a particularly playful person, let's find let's talk about what playful means. Let's talk about why maybe you're hesitant to be that. You want to be, but what's holding you back from that? And then really develop some strategies around what can you do in one day to be more playful, right?
Yeah.
What can you do next week? And then what can you do next month? And how do you sustain those things? And then, it's really, you have to be intentional. Some things, really great things do happen on their own, but more of them happen if you work on them and you plan for them. Right?
So if I was a spider, could I look up to be a cheetah and work on those traits? How would something like that work?
Something like that would be, so the characteristics that were selected for the spider were patience and perseverance, right? So we know you already have those, that you work on that. And if you look at the characteristics for a cheetah, they're focus and vision, right? Of course, there's other ones. People could say, well, they also, have all these things, right? And that's true. But so if you say, I resonate with the characteristics of patience and perseverance, how can we use those to develop increased focus and increased vision, right? And we say, okay, I wish I had more vision, right? Sometimes I think that because I've always been a doer. I think that's one of the things that's hard for me in thinking about having my own work and my own business, people say, well, what do you want it to be? What do you want it to look like? I'm like, I don't know, because I'm very, very used to somebody else telling me their vision, and then I figure out how to operationalize it.
And you know how to do it.
Right. And
And
so
get it done.
it's different.
Executor. Yep.
Yeah, right?
We did the Gallup, and I think I feel like you are leading with executing.
I think so too. And then you look, but we can talk about that. I mean, they might not be your top, traits, but there's things that you're aware of. And if I know that you're trying to develop that, if I'm your leader and I know you're trying to develop that, I can look for opportunities for you to be involved in that, so that I can model that for you. I can find other people who can help support you in that and understand that. And then I also included a few animals that lead in ways that we maybe don't want to lead, right? Mm-hmm. Some of the scavengers in the animal world. We talk about cowbirds, and some of these animals are Montana animals. Some of them are at Zoo Montana, for example, and others are animals that I either just liked or people maybe don't know a lot about, but then when you learn it, you go, oh yeah, I did know that, And some are from Wisconsin. That's where I grew up. So there's a little nod to that.
Cheese.
And that is true. There's no cheese in the book, but maybe. But the cowbird is an interesting bird. It lays its eggs in other birds' nests. So it's opportunistic, right? But it also shows a lack of responsibility. So it lays its eggs in other birds' nests and let the other birds raise their babies. So
and the birds must do it because they're still around.
Yeah,
the other birds.
I don't know. I mean, birds are birds, right? They do their thing, but they, that's a lack of responsibility in raising the young. They're opportunistic, which sounds like a good thing, but if you're doing that for the wrong reasons, it's maybe not a good leadership trait, right? So we can take a look at some of that, and if you are leading like that at some point, or you find yourself doing that, you go, oh, I don't want to do that. My grandpa was a bird man. And so he taught us all about plants and birds. And so when we look at birds and those things pop into my head, this is a really, really fun project for me because of that. It's just, I know a lot of things about a lot of stuff, but it's because other people either said it or taught you as a kid. And we all have those things, right? Random facts in your head about this, but I've been able to pull them together and kind of create something that hopefully is useful to people and that, people can use on their own. They can purchase the book, they can walk themselves through the activities and take time to color and reflect, or we can do, workshops so that teams can do it together. Or it can be a tool in leadership coaching where we use the workbook as, going page by page kind of thing. And, it ends up being homework, but it becomes how do we build goals and strategies for you as a leader around these traits of the animals.
And what a fun thing to have that. I think it's just sometimes in a workplace, you have to have fun things like this to tie it and make it more memorable. And so you talked a little bit about intentionality earlier, and I know you had a lot of intention when building your logo. Can you talk?
Oh, yeah.
And we'll show those that aren't
Sure.
listening. If you follow us on Instagram, you'll see it.
Sure.
But her logo's stunning, and you can just tell by looking at it that there's a lot of meaning and thought put into it.
Well, and I think I'll say this about the developing things as you're starting a business. It's a little bit intimidating and somewhat paralyzing when you think you have to do all of these things.
Yes.
Right. And so it's about just doing something. Right? Take the step, figure it out. And as I was sharing with you previously about the logo, for me, it's about investing in the individual. It's investing in the team or the organization and in the community. And when we talk about community, it's not necessarily just the place in which you live. It is the people that you surround yourself, these communities that are built around beliefs, purpose, ideas, identity, networks, peer networks, if you will. I've had a lot of experience in building those. And I really enjoy helping other people figure out what do they need? What is a community you would like to build? What is one you wish you had? Or what is one that exists that you would like to be a part of, but you don't know how to get into it, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's the individual, it's the group of people, and then the larger community. And so I originally was working with Alyssa Volts on creating this logo and explaining this to her. She used to work with me. She kind of knows how I think and what I was trying to accomplish. And I drew a picture on the back of an envelope of like little stick
Which I just love that too. It's like the idea that started
like the
on
napkin.
a napkin.
It is.
But it's like an envelope.
I know. It's not the bar napkin. It's the envelope in the drive-through at the bank. That was stick people in a pyramid, and then she created it. And we did a lot of research on colors, and it's fun for me. I have a lot of colors in my office. My house has a lot of colors. I joked earlier I should have worn more colors for the picture. I think color theory is very fascinating as well. And so when I looked at things, I wanted an orange and a purple and a green and a blue because they are colors that represent things like growth and this calmness and the need to bring energy into a space. And I think it does all of that, and that wisdom piece that kind of comes with the color of purple. And I think that will also be something that I'm able to share as people are looking at the coloring book. Sometimes we're naturally drawn to certain colors. They may not be the colors that we wear. I did the House of color analysis, and orange is not on my list, but I love the color orange. Yeah. It doesn't mean I'm going to put it on my body though, right? Yeah. But I think about why do I love it? Well, maybe it's because of the energy and vibrancy that it brings into a room or into a space. And how do we, I guess, interject that intentionally into our daily lives to make us better, right?
That's so fun. I'm like now thinking of the colors that I like that I don't wear, but I love them. Burnt orange is definitely one. I only wear it sometimes. But what's some other programming? I know we've talked about the coloring books, or the land animals and sea and sky.
Yep.
But I know you have other things too.
Sure. Well, it's that organization management and leadership development. It's the policies and systems thing. Like it or not, I've worked in the human resource-ish world. A lot of trial and error, not so much error, but a lot of trial and a lot of finding people who really can help you figure that out and navigate that. But the policy writing side of things, I did a lot of that over the years. What do people need? And the developing of plans, right? So it is about building a plan, step-by-step way of getting someplace, right? There's not this magical, 3 steps to being an amazing leader, right?
Check. No.
Yep, done. Ta-da.
You're a great leader.
We're done now.
But I really do think it is this, continuous process of evaluation and improving and intentionality.
And I think you do such a good job at that with the programming, and it's so thoughtful. It's so thoughtful as we're sitting here looking. And
I know.
Again, we'll share it for you people, for our audience listening. But you're so intentional about that. So I think that whoever's going to be and works with you, they know the path, and that there is a path, and it's not just like idea bubbles all over.
Yeah, there's some structure to it, but there also has to be that flexibility and that adaptability and individualization that needs to occur. Yeah. So, it's one-on-one coaching, leadership development. It's organizational management and policy development. It's board strategy. It's I've got a lot of history and training in organizational management, specifically in the nonprofit space, that I think people can learn from. And it's not that everybody has to do it exactly the same way.
Yeah.
But that we take the time to think about how is it that it will best serve you and your client base or your members or your team. Really working with emerging leaders. That's a really fun space for me to help people. I said it earlier, but oftentimes you're a really good fill in the blank and you become a supervisor, and then you're supposed to be a leader, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not given some tools along the way, you might figure it out. And some people figure it out faster than others, but some people might never figure it out, right? And so how frustrating is that? Because then you start to think, I'm not good at that. But you just don't have the foundation. You don't have the tools. And we can shorten that journey for people. If it takes 10 years to get in a certain, space on your own, maybe we can do it in 7 or 8 with some some plans and some intentionality and some focus and some self-reflection. And I think it's really important that leaders understand themselves, understand what drives them, what they're afraid of, why they make decisions the way they do, how other people see them, because sometimes how you see yourself and how other people see you are different, both positive and negative, right? And then we start to work on the team, right? I mean, those things can happen concurrently, but you really have to take some time to understand you before you can really lead well.
And I really like that with the younger leaders too, because it is a hard transition. It's hard in a way of like, you've just not done it before. And it is hard. It's hard to switch from being like managing projects or a program just specifically. And then you transition to now overseeing, because I've went through that a little bit, but it's a transition, because then you go from just that kind of stuff to now people that are involved. And that's a big deal. You're responsible for their growth. And if you don't have tools that you can tap into and connect with, you don't want to let them down either, or have a good person leave because you maybe weren't ready yet.
Yeah, well, and I would also add to that, I love that you work on the team to start giving them those tools right away. Start helping them develop those leadership qualities, understanding, where they line up in the animal world. Yeah. Because if you help them do that now, maybe it doesn't have to take even 7 or 8 years. Right. Maybe in 5 years, they'll be ready to just manage a team and do a really great job at it. But maybe that will even just help them in their personal life, being leaders in their family, things like that.
In their volunteer space, in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, within their communities. And so I just love all that. And I just have to add this plug in. I love that it's coloring as well as filling out some workbooks, because I think everybody has been given a book and you have to sit there and read some pages and you have to write stuff down and then you just doodle on the other side of it because you're like, well, this is terrible. Not saying this is all terrible, but I'm just saying it becomes work, right? Yes.
So I just talked about this in a different network space, the difference between work and play, and how can we integrate those more, right? As children, we're playful, and we lose that because
we're creative and
we're curious, and we lose these things as adults because we're supposed to be grown-ups now and we're going to go to work.
And we don't color.
And we don't color.
But
it's therapeutic too, I think, to color, because we've done some just coloring sheets upstairs. And I'm like, I feel like if people just give themselves quiet time without phone, email, technology, can color. And then like you talked about yesterday with me, you can think about these questions on the other page while you're coloring it. And you might have some other realizations that you maybe wouldn't have if you were just filling out the questions.
Yeah. And it's intentionally has just a couple of, the book intentionally has just a couple of lines for each question. It's not meant to be a full journal. It's really about what are those ideas, what are those prompts. It's to get you thinking. And then, yes, we can develop the, individual development plans and the goals and the strategies behind how do you better do more of that. But it also allows people that opportunity to think about how they lead, because it is a hard thing to answer. People will say, well, what is your leadership style? And I'm like, is there a list to choose from?
Yeah, what would you say?
Because you don't.
That's hard.
It is. It's hard, right?
We do ask that on this podcast all the time.
Yeah, I'm like, Dusty, what's your leadership style?
Maybe we do need some
ABC. And you think, I don't. How do you define that? And I think for me, it is about being willing to learn.
Yeah.
It is about making hard decisions. It is about having difficult conversations. I mean, difficult conversations don't get easier with time, right?
Dang it, I was hopeful.
I know them. And I'm not an avoider, but I also have to really work hard to not emotionally respond to things, to take the time to step back and think about things before I react or respond. And when you talked about, going from this project-based doing mindset to the leading, you have to find the balance in that, because if you're an achiever, which I also am.
Me too. It's in the top 5.
Right, it is. And, if you're an achiever, you want to be achieving things. And sometimes sitting and having that conversation and better understanding and asking questions isn't checking anything off a list, right? So you have to build in time for that. And, I've learned that you shouldn't ask the question if you're not willing to listen to the answer and do something about it, right? And that's growing some compassion. That's being willing to
I really like
to
that.
know where you're coming from or where that person is coming from and doing something about it. And I don't have to fix the problem. I just need to give you some tools or some resources or maybe another person to help you work on it, right? So yeah, I don't know what style that is. I mean, if there's a style guide,
I don't either. I'm like, is there a style guide, like a
I
color?
don't know, but I do think knowing your strengths is important. That that learner, that achiever, the individualization, the discipline, the input. Wanting to do the research.
So you have strategic. You have a few strategic.
Yeah.
Those are your top 5.
Those
I'm
are my
like,
5.
yours are strategic thinking and executing.
Yep. And so for me, the coloring book piece of it, it's taken 9 months, not continuous work, because you get into it for a while and then you kind of have to take a break, and that's hard to get back into. And, we broke it into like 12 animal pieces, like 12 animals at a time, but then decided, oh my gosh, we've got more content than we need for just one book. So how can we divide them? And for me, I want there to be a reason. I wasn't like, we're not just going to take random animals and say, here's book 1 and book 2. No, I want them to be, goes back
Thoughtful,
to that sort
intentional.
of, that intentionality and a little bit of the control, right?
Yep.
I'm not super willing to just leave it up to chance, because I want to spend the time thinking about why would somebody want to pick this up? And if the back cover says, why animals? Because I feel like that's one of the first questions somebody's going to ask. Why,
And you're right.
Why
Yeah.
animals?
Can you talk to us about, so you registered your company with the state, but can you talk to us about, so like as a new business, can you talk to us about that process?
Sure.
Because I think some other people maybe listening are like, they have that idea and it's how do you take that first jump?
Yeah, I think that the first step's always the hardest, right? And I haven't used the resources that I know are out there to the best of my ability. I haven't taken the time to do that. Sometimes to me, it feels daunting, like all these things. And I do have a tendency, and I know this, I have to work on this all the time.
It's good self-awareness.
It is about, like, it seems like that whatever it is going to be really hard. Setting up a square. I've just mentioned this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to set up a square. And it's on the list and it's on my mind and I'm not doing it. And then I did it and it took like 20 minutes. And I was like, oh my gosh, now I haven't used it yet. But
it's like
why is that so intimidating? And it's not, I don't know. And that's just one example. It's I don't know what to name my website. I don't know what to name my business. I want it to mean something. I don't want it, and so finally somebody just said, just use your name. Start, use your name. And I was like, okay, you're right. I've lived in this community for a long time. It's where my work will start. I hope that it will grow and go beyond here, but people will know what that is, right? And then I created Rise Up Leadership Media, which is like the publishing side of my company. So that will be the 2 coloring books, activity books, workbooks. It likely will be additional training materials. I used to say this, and it's really funny. Like, I always said, I really love developing the curriculum, and then I would just let somebody else go teach it, right?
You are really good at developing and teaching.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh my gosh, I get to do both, right? And
it's got your name on it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It is pretty cool. But even writing, I mentioned this to you the other day when we were talking that, the hardest thing for me to write was the about the author.
Oh.
Because I was like,
everybody has a hard time writing about themselves. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like small enough. I mean, I would assume, I don't like writing my bio. I did use the help of AI and someone else helped me. But
sure.
It's like, it's not that big. And you're like, I just want it to really encompass myself.
Right.
When you read it and you get it, like, here's what I believe in or what I'm about. And it's daunting.
It is.
And it's on the back of the books.
Yeah.
Or
and
in the
then
books.
and then you start to use words and then you start to second guess how people will define those words and what is that going to make them think about you? And, it just is a little bit spinning, right? And then you finally do it. And, you send it to the publisher and she's like, this is awesome. And I'm like, really? Okay, thank you. But, and then
Good,
it's like, can I stop sweating now? Right.
Yeah.
Like that's enough of that, but so, having those 2 companies and again, me needing to have this, the structure piece of it is important to me. That's who I am. I understand that. And does it hold you back sometimes? Yes. I am not the go with the flow person. I'd like to be more of that. I think that I am learning how to do that in certain spaces, but structure is important to me. And so it makes sense to me to do the consulting on one side and do the publishing, the materials on the other. And then, it is talking to people and those who have done it previously. So again, they can shorten your journey, right? So, and I can learn from some of their mistakes. I can learn from what they wish they would have done differently. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that I'm not still going to have my own mistakes and my own wish I would have done it differently. But again, you can get farther along with some help, right?
And
Absolutely.
someone will come to you. I mean, you'll be that for someone too. They'll come to you and be like, well, what did you learn and what do you wish you would have done differently? So I think it's like a full circle moment.
It's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And even when I was writing About the Author, I thought, you know what? I took a lot of the pieces, the science piece, the structure part, the people thing, the creative side, the love of reading. I love to read. I have books everywhere in my house. Most of them are organized because, well.
Tell us, how are they organized, by name or color?
No, they're just stacked nicely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I do love the bookcases that have them organized by color. I don't think I could do that because I want them to make sense to me, not just the color of their cover.
I would agree with that.
But I also learned that, the publisher told me don't have a white cover on your book because when it's available for sale on Amazon, the outer edges of the book disappear because it's on a white background. And I was like, oh, I had no idea.
It's a good product photo.
Yeah. Or even like the first rendition of the cover of the land animals had a blue background. And I loved the color, but it didn't make sense to me because, well, the sea and sky one should be blue and the land should be green, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, no,
it's those kinds of things that, some people will say, oh my gosh, just go with it. And I'm like, can't.
I gotta change it. It's gotta make sense.
It has to make some sense, right? And I am happy to tell the story about the why, because there are animals in the land book and in the sea and sky book that you're going to say don't belong in that book. Maybe they should be in the other one.
Oh. And can you give us a sneak of which one?
I can give you an example. Like
a penguin? I still think that would be sea, so
the
maybe not.
The penguin is in the sea and sky book.
Yeah, because I feel like that makes sense.
A honeybee?
I feel like that's land. But it flies in the sky.
It could do both.
It could do both, right? So it's in the land book. And the peacock.
Could be. Do peacocks actually fly?
Well, they do. They can get.
Okay,
they fly
into trees.
They fly into trees, right?
And then they attack. No, I'm just kidding.
And then they're up in the sky. Right?
And they chase
just
me.
Kidding.
So they're in the sea and sky book. But somebody could argue
it's
and say that they should.
For you.
I just can't wait for Jeff the Nature Guy to get a hold of the book and be like,
Jennifer,
why
what
did
were
you say
doing?
this? Yeah.
So you should do a workshop at the zoo.
Oh, actually, have one planned. Mm-hmm, yeah, later in June. Yep.
That's so exciting. You talked a little bit about your family and your grandpa or your dad.
My grandpa.
Your grandpa really, he loved birds. Are there other things as you've been working on your consulting company, on the book, on the programming that have brought back old memories for you, or you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize like that would really lead me to here?
That's an interesting thing because, and it kind of ties back to the About the Author piece, right? You're thinking it's important to me that I am a mom. Right. Mm-hmm. I never thought that would be a thing. That was not supposed to be what I when I was growing up, I was not interested in that.
I relate to that.
Yeah. And being a mom has really changed the way I look at the world. But I also, because my daughters are grown adult people right now doing their own things, I'm learning from them, and that was an important piece to me to think about. Like to state, Jennifer is the mother of 2 daughters. Yay. Right. Okay. Sure. That's great. But you know what? The things that they've taught me, the way that they care for each other, they're very different, but they support one another's differences. That was important to me when they were growing up, that even if you don't, play sports, you come and support your sister in that. And even if you don't play music, you come and support your sister in that. And maybe you both do some of those things and one is better than the other. But it's not about that. It's about, meeting them where they are and encouraging them to be themselves. And they do that so well. which is, kind of
A kudos to your parenting.
Sure. But, but also it's an opportunity for me to take a look and see them. I didn't do that alone, right? The world and the people that helped guide that are everywhere, but to stop and reflect on what they taught me. And, even then, there was this whole thing about writing a dedication. And I said, do I really have to do that? Because I felt like I had to make a list of all of these people and I was going to miss someone. I mean, I know a lot of people.
Yeah,
right?
you do.
Sure. Yeah. And so, it ended up being a little bit more, like the importance of the leaders in the past, the leaders of today, and the leaders of the future, right?
That's really lovely.
And that is something that I did spend time reflecting on, the leaders that I have had in my life, good and bad, right?
Because I think you learn a lot from both.
You do. And, you either, the first 18 years, the first 16 years, I had the same supervisor, right? Mm-hmm. And so I could choose to either do what he did or do the opposite, right? And so, because you're trying to navigate and figure it out. And during some of that time, I didn't really have any formal leadership training. That wasn't part of what we did. Mm-hmm. And, so I spent time thinking about that. And I think about the people that are coming after me and the young leaders and the things that I see in them that I never saw in myself at that age, and how impressive that is. And how do I, as somebody in my stage of life, how do I encourage that? Mm-hmm. How do I support them in that? How do I help them, connect them to opportunities? So yeah, it's been a really good reflection process. I spent time at the lake with my parents in Wisconsin last summer and spent time writing and doing that. And, I was out fishing in the morning with my brother and I caught this, fabulous northern pike. And I thought, that's got to be in the book, right? And then I was like, well, I don't know too much about them. I know what they are. I know how to catch them. I know I don't want to touch them. I don't really like to touch any fish. I'm happy catching them, but somebody else has to come along because I don't want to take it off the hook.
So you're not a solo fisher.
Nope. So then I just started reading things, and then, the blue herons on the shore and the patience. I mean, that thing stood still for the longest time in somewhat of an awkward position, just waiting for the right time to scoop up some food, and it just makes you,
Watching, waiting.
it just makes you pay attention more to what's going on around you. And so the whole exercise, of course, I overthink everything, right? As we probably can tell from this, but the whole process has really made me think about that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
I think that's nice, and having some of those things that do remind you of your family in subtle ways within and the impacts they've had, whether it's your daughters or your brother or your parents. Yeah. I think that's really special. And it gives more into your why, I think. And
sure. Yeah.
Why those people knew to push you when how you started with those people are like, no, you've got it. Like they see that in you and they're like, no, you got it. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know. And you don't believe in yourself, but I mean, it is wonderful.
Everybody else does.
It is wonderful to have people around you that believe in you a little bit more than you do. You have to have some self-belief and it comes. But, when you think about the other things, like if you would have asked me in 5th grade what I was going to be when I grew up, I was going to be a journalist. That was my plan.
Wow.
I was going to be, and then I started to learn foreign languages and learn more about countries in the world. And I didn't do any travel until much later in life. But then I thought I was going to be like international interpreter, or I was going to do like world, journalism and world affairs and all of that kind of stuff. And then you start to think why you can't do those things. I never thought I would have the money to be able to travel. And I've been fortunate enough to be involved in a lot of group travel and helping provide that opportunity to other people. And that's just opened my eyes to so much more. Right. Mm-hmm. And then again, back to I'd like to write a book. And I saw Karen write books, and I'm really good about taking other people's books and helping present it to other people so that it's not, if you're not a reader, which I know there are not people, that there are people out there that say, I'm not a reader. Fortunately, we have audiobooks and things now for people, but I can read the book and pull out the concepts and help teach them to you in a really fun way and give all the credit to the author, because I think that's very important to me, but help you rather than just feeling like I'm never going to get through this. I can't. It's work, right? How can we make it fun so that you can learn those things too. I mean, I volunteered in the library when my kids were in elementary school. I have an aunt that's a librarian. I mean, that's my oldest daughter always says that, you know, and she's got books everywhere. You know, we say we're going to go to the used book sale at the library, and then we have to set limits, you know, because you don't really need all these books. But how do you stop getting the books? Like people will say, will you ever read them all? I say, if I live long enough, you know, I'm always reading. And so, but I will also say that COVID gave me that back. I was a reader. I as a young person, I did a lot of reading for, you know, just for leisure and for pleasure. And then I started only reading for work, and I still did a lot of that, but it was hard.
It is because you're reading all these books, and it's like once you get that good novel again, you're like, this is why I loved reading.
And so, and it does. It takes you to places and shows you possibility. And I just finished a book, and one of the quotes in it, and I won't get it exactly right, but it was about finding where your greatest passion meets the world's greatest pain. And so if you can figure out where you can work, because the whole story was about a young woman that was trying to figure that out. She didn't think that being a baker was enough because she really wanted to change the world, right? And so she goes on these, you know, adventures and learning and all of these things. And so you might think that what you love to do is not enough. It's not big enough. It's not grand enough.
It's not making the impact that you want.
Right.
Or you think you want,
Yep. But if you stay open to possibilities and you keep looking for that, where's that pain point or where is that need in the world, right? And how can I come and, you know, fill that need?
And fix the problem that you see.
I've never seen someone frown while eating a croissant, so I'm just going to throw that out there.
Especially a good one. But back to your book, it sounds like, you know, definitely, I think you've done that for others, but again, like all of this other stuff, how awesome would it be for you to do that, to conquer that? I'm sure there'll be frustrations and learning things along the way, but
that's business ownership though.
But then having it and being able to use your own things that you created and just like the passion you have for talking about all of these things that then you get to share with others is so touching.
Yeah. Thank you.
What is on the horizon for you and your companies then?
Well, it's the actually having the books published. It's the figuring out the workshops and the training opportunities that go along with those. It's learning how to market and sell those things as tools. I see them as tools. It's you know, the website's under development. You know, it is kind of continuing to, you know, figure out where you're going and what you're creating. And you know, I am fortunate to have worked with a lot of people in the community. And, you know, I have, every time I've started a new network or started a new program, I have some early adopters who will just be like, I'll go to anything that you do. I know it'll be great. And I'm like, fantastic, right? And then there's other people you have to have some proven, you know, track record before they buy in. And so I'm hoping the early adopters are the ones that will, you know, give me the grace and the space to sort of test my workshops and that kind of thing, you know, and then I really hope to use my own communities and networks across the country to be able to bring that to other people. And who knows what's next, right?
We are so excited to watch you and for all of these to get our hands on some of them, like the tangible workbooks. We're really excited.
I know they're coming.
And we know you're doing that June event, which will be the Montana Young Professional Summit, right?
Yes.
Which is really exciting to have young YPs from all across the state here in Billings again, which they haven't been since 2017, if I'm not mistaken, which is really exciting. So we're going to hear a quick message from one of our sponsors, and then we're going to jump into some rapid fire questions. Thank you to Big Sky Economic Development for supporting the Vault at 201 North Broadway. Big Sky Economic Development provides leadership and resources for business creation, expansion, retention, new business recruitment, and community development. If you are starting a business, growing or expanding your business, diversifying your customer base, or maybe you're looking for business trainings to attend to continue to learn and grow, they're excited and here to help. Even if you're thinking of relocating your company into Billings, they're a resource for you. BSED also provides resources for community development initiatives by planning, partnering, and managing projects and administering grants for redevelopment and placemaking. Their workforce development program brings together industry and education partners to anticipate and respond to community workforce needs. And they provide talent attraction and retention resources for your business to use under the community brand Better Off in Billings. BSED's Rock 31 program is focused on helping startups thrive. And in their location in downtown Billings, they have 2 floors dedicated to co-working and additional spaces throughout their building open to the community to host their meetings, events, and trainings. Visit bigsky.economicdevelopment.org. Again, that's bigsky.economicdevelopment.org, or follow them on Facebook and LinkedIn. Jennifer, thanks for being here with us today. So we like to end each episode with a few rapid fire questions. So my first one is, what's the one thing that gets you to relax or de-stress?
Riding my bike. And I really like to ride on the trails. Riding on the street is not particularly
doesn't
relaxing.
seem safe.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's reading and riding the bike, not at the same time.
I really like that. Yeah. Audiobook maybe.
Yeah. Yes.
On the trail.
Very
where
true.
It's safe.
On the trail. Yep.
What is the best advice you have ever received?
Oh
I like to give the doozies.
my gosh. Let me think. I think it really is that message of believing in yourself, knowing that you have what it takes, and it is, there's only one of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so to not compare yourself to others, and that's hard, and to not judge yourself or make assumptions about things, but to talk to yourself in the way that you would want someone else to talk to you, and to believe in you.
I really like that. I'm just going to ask a follow-up to that one.
Sure.
Is that something that you like, that when maybe you're in a moment where you're like, down or not thinking that, is it you that pulls you back out, or sometimes are there others that help?
It's so important to have that support, that community, those people that you trust, that you can, that you can call, that you can go to when you're not feeling your best.
Yeah.
Or that can help kind of redirect you, or but are genuinely concerned about you, not just the snap out of it kind of comments, but the, why are you feeling that way? Because one of the worst things is to tell somebody that, you're struggling or you're grumpy or you're sad, and people are like, stop doing that. Stop feeling that way.
Like, I wish I could.
Yeah,
but
I'm trying, man.
Put those feelings away.
The other thing that I've learned about myself, though, is that when I kind of get in that not healthy space, doing things for other people brings me out of that. So if I don't have somebody to go call or do, I find something to do for someone else, right? So like if I'm all stressed out trying to get through a project and it's not moving like I want, and then I start to have like the negative self-talk, I put it away and I go find somebody else and say, what are you working on? And is there something I can do for you? And then you can stop, you turn the attention to something other than you, and then you can get back to it.
Take a break from it. I sometimes call my brother, and then he like brings me back to reality of like, Marcel, is it that big of a deal?
Right.
I mean, but not about, he's like, Marcel, you got that. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
You've got it. Why? This isn't hard for you. What are you doing? So, but I think taking your mind away from it for a second and then coming back fresh is really nice. Yep. What are some non-negotiables in business and life?
I think trust is huge. I think that finding those people that you can trust is really important. I think that, working hard to not judge people or make assumptions about why they're acting the way that they're acting or why they said what they said. You can't control the actions of other people, but you can control how you respond, right? That was something that I tried to teach my children when they were young. Like they would get so mad because somebody was doing whatever. And I was like, well, you can't do anything about that. But so what you can do is focus on how you're reacting and how you're responding, right? I think that what you focus on grows, right? So you will if you are looking for the negative thing, you will find it. If you are looking for what's wrong with the meal that's placed in front of you, or the way the person's driving next to you, or how Marcel is doing her project, you're going to find something wrong with it, right? But the reverse is true. If you start looking for the good things, you're going to find those, right? And you focus on those, and more of those will grow.
I love that.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that really answers
No,
your
but
question.
I think
No,
it
I
does
think it-
in a bigger way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my last question for you is, what animal represents your leadership style?
I love that. I want to be the
Kayla's
entire
so
zoo.
good.
I want to be I'm the entire animal kingdom. I think the fox.
Tell us about the fox.
So the fox leads with strategy and cleverness. So
I definitely think that
I
describes
think
you.
that I could probably pick out some of the other ones that I would really hope that I could say. But strategy is really important to me. You've probably heard that throughout this whole thing. And then like that cleverness. And to me, that's about finding the sort of innovative way of looking at things, or seeing, can we do it differently? I mean, I am a big fan of tradition, but I'm not a big fan of change for the sake of change, which I know there's a lot of value in doing that. I just know that's not who I am.
Yeah.
But I also need to challenge myself to look at changing and embracing change when there is benefit. And because I need to know why we're changing something, I know that I need to explain that to other people as well. So, if we're making changes, I know I need to lean into the explanation of how I feel this will improve something, or why we are doing this, and take the time to explain it versus just doing it and saying, deal
There
with
you
it.
go.
Right?
Yeah.
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 Well, and I think it's how you solve problems too. I think you're clever in solving problems. Like when people bring you problems, you're clever in helping them find the solution or the, next steps to get out of said problem. So
Sure. Yep. And
the fox, I love that.
you start to ask questions and learn a little bit more about the challenge. And then you can I'm not the person who sits at the table and has the best idea right away. I have to think about it.
Yeah.
But typically I can come up with something.
And it's worth the wait.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. So if our listeners are ready and they want to find out what their animal leadership style is, where can they find you? How can they learn more about it? Where can they potentially get the workbooks?
Sure. Well, right now, my email address is jenniferreiserconsulting@gmail.com.
And can you spell Reiser for them?
Yes, it's Reiser. So Jennifer Reiser consulting@gmail.com. That will be shorter. That will be different, probably by the time this airs. And you can share that certainly when we have that. But you'll also be able to search Leading in Color. And it's
Awesome.
leadership lessons from the animal world.
And it'll be available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, in Sioux, Montana for locals, right?
I believe so.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Jennifer, this has been so much fun. Thanks for joining us on The Vault.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Make sure you are subscribed to The Vault at 201 North Broadway, wherever you podcast, including YouTube.
Connect with us on Facebook at The Vault at 201 North Broadway and Instagram at The Vault_201.
Don't forget to visit us at thevault@201.com and subscribe to our newsletter.
We will see you next time.
Bye.